The first day of UA arrives, Deku chilling in his seat, scrolling on his phone, being one of the first people there. This is until a familiar face walks through the door. Bakugo. He stared Deku down, explosions going off in his palms, ready to lunge. Before his explosions stop, he looks down. What the hell? From the front, Aizawa stands up. Sit down and shut up. There's no quirk usage inside, dumbass. Bakugo sits down and Aizawa introduces himself as their homeroom teacher. But before they can do anything else, they're told to meet him outside for a first day test. Sorry. Becky makes his way outside, talking to some of the kids like Kirishima and Mina, glad they both got in. He's then thrown the ball, looking at it confused before Aizawa explains the test. They're testing their quirk usage. Deku's told to throw it, and he thinks for a second. How could he make this go further? He thinks back to when he was a kid, saving Bakugo from falling, his shield bouncy and malleable. Deku crossed his fingers on his right hand and stomped his foot, throwing the ball into the sky. As he throws it, he crosses his left hand, one barrier appearing right above it, and another appearing right below it. The ball slams into the one above it, the barrier stretching like rubber before shooting it into the other barrier. It slams into the middle of the other barrier, stretching back once more before shooting off into the distance. Aizawa looks at the distance counter as it increases. 380 meters. Not bad, kid. Deku's surprised by how far he got. For a first idea, that wasn't too bad. Bakugo looks on. How the hell did he master his quirk this much? Was he always this strong? He puts his head down and at the back of the class, his hand curling into a ball, shaking with rage. They open again. Not yet. The rest of the tests go on. Deku Loki can't use his barriers during all of these. Well, at least not yet. So he does get 12th place. His body is much more built and he's much more confident than in canon. So no one gets expelled from this timeline either. Just because. From there, class will go on. Everyone settling in, talking amongst themselves. Deku hanging around Kirishima and Mina a lot more. Them two hating Bakugo for what he did to Deku and telling him after he told them what happened when he was a kid. Giving him the stink eye every now and then. This is until one day everyone would be especially tense. Today was their first hero training. The good stuff. They sit in anticipation as someone unexpected rushes through the door. All Might. They all go nuts. It's All Might? He shuts them up and tells them to go outside before telling them about the exercise, revealing their costumes. Everyone gets them right on before meeting him at Ground Gamma. Deku's costume in this timeline is low-key the same as the Deku in canon, but when he was walking the streets like a bum, that costume is called, like, the first costume he had sucked. He ain't wearing that shit, let's be real. People checking out each other's costumes as All Might reads the rules, pulling names from a box and powering people up to fight. Deku and Uraraka versus Ida and Bakugo. Bakugo stares daggers at Deku, his grin uncontrollable. Deku staring straight forward, seeing Bakugo in his peripherals. He thought he had already put him on a leash, but I guess not. From there on, he would think, walking with Uraraka quietly as he's in his own head. How could he humble Bakugo? Uraraka, finally sick of the silence, asks what's up. Deku explaining his beef with Bakugo and how he's about to humble him. Uraraka pitches in, saying he gives a mean vibe and that he does need to be humbled. From there, Deku and Uraraka walk in, nodding before splitting off. Deku rushing upstairs and trying to meet Bakugo halfway, his prayers being answered as he turns the corner, seeing Bakugo exploding down the hallway, salivating almost at the thought of fighting Deku. Deku looks right at him, eyes wild, still bubbling with rage from years past. Oh, how I've waited for this. He clocks his right fist back, his hand exploding as it shoots forward. Deku sits completely still, holding his hand low to his side and crossing his fingers on his right hand. Bakugo's punch slams into the wall, about an inch from his nose. Bakugo recoiling in pain as his gauntlet cracks. Bakugo snarls, cocking back both hands, spinning into a sweeping kick. But the same thing happens. Another wall blocks it, then another, and another. Every attack blocked like he's in a cube of mirrors. Deku stepping back and creating panels between each of them with a surgical precision. Bakugo can't even reach him. It's like he's been locked inside a puzzle made of glass. Deku speaks calmly. This is what you've become. You haven't changed at all. Bakugo roars, throwing a final explosion upward and breaking the ceiling. But Deku lifts his hand, crosses his fingers. Wham! A massive wall drops above and slams Bakugo down. Not enough to hurt, but just enough to make him kneel. Deku walks up to him. He doesn't even raise a hand. You know what the worst part about this is, Katsuki? Deku's voice is low, quiet. The class listening on from the monitors gets real still. You didn't even touch me. Bakugo glares up, seething. Deku turns around. I beat you 4 years ago. Seems you just didn't notice. With that, Deku begins to walk away, releasing his fingers on Bakugo and unpinning him from the floor. The class looks on in shock. What was Bakugo going to do? Bakugo stood completely still, staring at the floor as he left, gauntlet pulsating red. A drop of blood dropped to the floor in front of him. He looked up, completely silent, pulling his left hand up and pulling the pin. The speakers coming on for about half a second before the explosion hit. All Might screaming desperately, "No, don't do..." He's cut off. The explosion's ripping through the floor, ceiling, and walls. Bakugo being slammed back, his left shoulder dislocating. He didn't care though. He looked up, watching as the dust cleared. Deku still walking straight ahead, walking up the staircase and rearing the third floor. Bakugo dumbfounded by this. Too many things in his head to think about. Like an animal, he rushed at Deku, full speed running in his direction as he slams against a clear barrier. The same barrier that tanked his explosion. Once more, Bakugo is sat on the floor unconscious as his classmates stared in silence. Upstairs, Deku and Uraraka meet, going into the bomb room and facing Ida straight on. It's not even a challenge. Deku traps him in a bubble and Uraraka runs in and touches the bomb. All Might exclaims their victory as Bakugo is shipped to Recovery Girl. Deku low-key feeling a little bit bad after seeing the state he was in. All Might telling him he did the right thing though. Class continues from there, Bakugo not coming back for a day or two, his vibe being completely different afterwards, kinda sulking if anything. In his mind, Deku hadn't won, he just hid behind some stupid wall. His quirk was still superior. Deku low-key feeling the same, this time training alone for a week or so in his spare time, trying to implement his stretchy barriers as a way to strengthen his attack, like some trampoline, or like some spring-loaded type of action. Trying and trying all week, eventually getting there. But we'll hear more about that later. For now, Deku has one thing to go to, the USJ. They all load onto the bus and the normal conversation goes down. Who's the strongest? This time it's between Todoroki and Deku. Everyone wondering if ice could get into his barrier. No, it can't. They keep chatting until they finally get inside. As the class steps through the massive double doors of the USJ, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The dome facility loomed around them like something out of a theme park. Only, instead of roller coasters, it was sectioned off into disaster zones. Flood, fire, collapsing buildings, and a whole space for rescue ops. Everyone looked around in awe, some pointing at the flood zone, others whispering about the fake earthquake set. Deku, meanwhile, stood near the back, arms crossed, eyes scanning everything. This was supposed to be a rescue training exercise, but why did he feel so tense? Before long, 13 stepped forward and began her explanation, talking about the value of rescue work and how quirks aren't just meant for combat, and the importance of precision, control, and teamwork. She spoke like a teacher, calm and collected, although her dome helmet hid her emotion. Azawa stood beside her, arms crossed, nodding occasionally. Deku didn't say anything, but his stomach twisted. His instincts felt off. He looked towards the center plaza, towards the fountain, just in time for the lights to dim slightly, and almost like a power outage. Some of the class muttered, looking up, then in the middle of the plaza, it appeared, swirling a black vortex of mist. It twisted like smoke, but moved with intention, growing wider and wider until a massive portal formed. Shigaraki, Korigiri, and over a dozen villains stepped through. Deku's eyes widened immediately, his heart skipping. This wasn't part of the exercise. Oh, this ain't no drill, Kaminari muttered from the side. Someone else screamed. Korigiri raised his misty arms and began speaking. Welcome, students of UA. We hope you enjoy our little field trip. A second later, the mist split and shot forward like tendrils of smoke. Before anyone could react, it grabbed Deku by the chest and yanked him in. His eyes flared open as he vanished. Everyone was in chaos, students screaming, 13 shouted for them to stay together as the mist spread through the room like a fog-born blast. One by one, students were taken, but the scene shifted now to Deku, who was flung through the warp tunnel like he'd been tossed through a hose. He felt his stomach turn before slamming onto solid concrete. His boots scraped against the floor as he grabbed himself mid-fall, rolling up and standing up to to see where he landed. The ruined city zone, rubble everywhere, collapsed buildings, smoke from simulated fires wafting through the air. He looked up. No one else was around. Damn it, he whispered, crossing his fingers out of reflex, a wall materializing briefly in front of him as a failsafe. This was a setup. From behind him, he heard a heavy crunch of stones. Footsteps, several of them. A gang of villains emerged from the smoke, each one of them looking more dangerous than the last. Crowbars, sharp claws, and even a chainsaw. One lunged. Instantly, Deku stomped his hands and crossed his fingers. A panel slamming up like a shield, stopping any charge dead in its tracks. He twisted and kicked, a second barrier forming beneath one of the villains, flinging them into a window and shattering it like a catapult. Where did they even come from? He muttered, breathing heavy, forming a translucent dome around himself to give himself space to think. He couldn't stay here. He needed to get to the others. And then he saw it. Aizawa in the distance, closing off the closer to the plaza. Underground Hero was fighting like a demon, scarf whipping around, his quirk activating and deactivating with a split second timing, putting villains down left and right. But Deku could see something else, something bigger, something wrong. From the center of the plaza stepped a creature. No, a monster, a massive creature with its brain exposed, muscles like body armor, walking like a predator off the leash. The Nomu, and it was headed straight for Aizawa. Sorry. Deku's feet moved before he even thought. He sprinted through the ruined building, wall jumping off debris, making makeshift barriers as springboards, sliding through cracks in rubble, heading straight for the fight. As the Nomu reeled back a punch, ready to cave Aizawa's skull in, Deku screamed from the distance, slamming his foot down and crossing both hands. Boom. A massive shimmering wall erupted right in front of right between the Nomu and Aizawa, the monster's fist slamming into it with a sickening crack. The wall held. Aizawa blinked in shock, turning to see Deku skidding to a halt, dirt and blood on his uniform, teeth clenched. "I've got you, sir," Deku shouted, reinforcing the wall with a second layer, then twisting his hand and forming two smaller panels on the left and right like braces. The Nomu reeled back and punched again, harder. The shield trembled, but it didn't break. Aizawa stepped back, giving Deku a nod with his scarf whipping around him like as he took down another incoming villain. The Nomu roared, frustrated, Shigaraki stepping forward and twitching like an animal. "Who the hell is that?" he hissed. "The green-haired one. He's not on the records." "He's stronger than expected," Korogiri muttered. "That shield, it must even rival reinforcement quirk." Oh, never mind, sorry. Shigaraki growled, then let Nomu handle him. The Nomu lunged, not at Aizawa, but this time at Deku. Deku crossed his fingers and slammed his foot down again, forming a staircase of barriers underneath his feet. Leaping up like he was running on air, he spun midair and formed a panel behind himself like a floating shield, bracing for impact as the Nomu jumped to meet him. They collided midair, Deku blocking the punch, but the force cracked him through the air like a thunderclap. He was launched backwards, slamming into two ruined pillars, coughing but still conscious. That was the end of part 2. Like, subscribe, and comment again. Sorry about the weird recording, honestly. I don't know what the hell I was doing with this script. Once again. Either way, the story will end up good. Hope you like it. If you do, please check out I don't know, just anything you can. Catch ya.